Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be making this glitter epoxy charcuterie board. This charcuterie board is made entirely of epoxy, so I'm going to be using this mold that I got from Little Lee and Rose, and I'm going to start with, for my first layer, 240 milliliters of epoxy. That's 8 ounces. I've got about 7 of these little medicine cups, and I'm going to fill them each up with between 20 to 25 milliliters-ish. Each cup is going to get its own glitter or mica or whatever pigment we're putting in. So if you want to use more colors or less colors, just make sure you have enough cups for the amount of different stuff you want to add into your mold. I'm using mostly different glitters, and then I've got 1 mica powder, which is my Arteza Gold, and 1 pigment powder, which is Wintergreen from PDB. Once all my colors and glitters are distributed in their little cups, I'm going to mix them all together, make sure they're mixed really well. And my epoxy has been sitting for probably about 10 minutes before I started this whole process. I'm using CCDIY medium viscosity artist resin for this. Once all of our colors are mixed, I'm going to take this spray bottle that has 99% rubbing alcohol in it, and I'm going to spray my mold down very lightly. You don't want to do a heavy spray, but this helps prevent any bubbles from forming on the bottom of that mold. I'm going to take any of the leftover epoxy I had from pouring into my little cups, and I'm going to pour just that plain epoxy with nothing added to it into my mold, just kind of randomly. I wanted to use this as kind of an assistant to getting my colors to move around and distribute a little bit. I'm going to start to add my different colors and glitters. I'm just pouring them randomly, kind of distributing little spots of color here and there. I wanted this to look as natural as possible, so I'm kind of going for a little bit of a geode natural rock marble color scheme slash feel here. Hopefully you get the vibe I'm going for. As I'm pouring the colors, I'm also going in with my finger and kind of mixing them together, spreading them out a little bit. I'm going to mix all of these or swirl them together once all the colors are in there. So don't worry about pouring perfectly straight lines or keeping the colors from mixing, because we want them to all mix and gel together and look like this is a naturally occurring glitter masterpiece like in nature. You can absolutely pour these however you want. If you wanted to pour them horizontally or vertically or diagonally, how I am here. This is the fun and the beauty of doing things like this. You can do whatever you want, and it'll probably end up looking incredible. So just trust yourself and have fun. I decided to go against the grain literally and pour some colors going in the opposite direction diagonally. And once we mixed everything and kind of gelled things together, I really like how it turned out. I just didn't want everything to be so uniform and going all the same direction. I wanted to mix it up a little bit. I continued to pour all of my different colors until all my cups were empty, and then I took any remaining just regular clear plain epoxy that I had left and poured it over the entire surface basically. I just wanted to use a little bit more of that to help me blend these colors together and create a little bit more dimension and space between all of the colors. I really used every drop of that epoxy that I had. Never want to waste anything, so I took it all out, every drop that I could get, and I just started to run my finger over all the colors, swirl them together, just do this random pattern of swirling and mixing. And then I took my heat gun and ran it over a few of the spots just to create a little bit more natural movement, get those colors to blend a little bit more, and take away any literal finger marks that you can see on this piece. Of course, when you're using your heat gun, you don't want to leave it in one spot for too long, and you don't want to make your epoxy so hot that you cause a reaction. So just always be careful when you're using your heat gun or torch or anything like that. I'm going to add some of my favorite thing lately, some gold leaf, to this board. I'm putting not a dainty amount, but I'm also not overboarding this with gold leaf. So you can add, of course, as little or as much as you want. I'm just going to spread it out a little bit, kind of break those flakes apart. And then I'm going to hit it with my heat gun to move them around and break them up even more.
I
I sprinkled a little bit of extra glitter on top of everything, and then I let this cure for a full 24 hours before I was ready to add the next layer. Okay, we're back. We're ready to add our second layer. This is going to be the back side of our piece. And I'll tell you right now, I did make a little boo-boo and I fixed it later. So I'm going to kind of speed through this part because you end up not seeing any of this. So I've got another 8 ounces of epoxy. I'm mixing together some navy blue mica powder in with some bright from Peachy Olive Glitters. And I'm going to pour half of my epoxy mixture into this navy blue and glitter mixture. Then I'm going to take some of that regular plain epoxy and do the same thing that we did on the first layer. Just pour a little bit of that all over the board. And then I'm going to take some of that same gold mica powder that we used in the first layer, pour that into the remaining epoxy that doesn't have anything mixed in, mix those together, and then I'll mix my navy blue and bright together. Oh my God, this color, I have to put this on a cup or something. It's so pretty. So then I took my navy blue, poured it all over in a random pattern, just how we did with the first layer. And then I did the same thing with my gold. Almost poured with my left hand. That would have been bad. Switch your hands. And then I went in and completely messed it up, basically. I poured all of this and then mixed it together how I did with the last layer. And I didn't like it. I thought it just kind of looked a little bit messy. It didn't look finished. So I decided to add some gold alcohol ink. Ugh, it just looks so ugly. I don't like it at all. I knew immediately once I dropped the ink down that I was not a fan. So I covered it with glitter. I didn't film this part because I kind of just did it in a panic, like an hour after I had put down the gold alcohol ink. So what I did, I took Metrocity or Metro City from Peachy Olive Glitters, put it on the corners, took Athena from Peachy Olive Glitters and did a little diagonal stripe there, and then Champagne from PDB and put that in the middle, just in this diagonal pattern, and I felt much better. I let that cure, and then we were ready to do the best part, which is demolding this thing. So I'm going to carefully peel back all of the edges and then reveal the masterpiece. I really like how this side turned out. It makes up for the alcohol ink fiasco that we had on the other side. I really love how you can see every single color that we added and they all flow together really nicely. And here is the other side with the glitter. I think that they look much better together. What I'm gonna do next is clean up the edges. I'm taking a super sharp X-Acto knife and just running it along the edges of the board. Be very, very careful when you're doing this. You always wanna cut in the direction away from you. Once all of the sharp edges are taken off, I'm gonna take a 220 grit sanding block and just sand down the edges a little bit more to make sure they're smooth, wipe it down with rubbing alcohol on a coffee filter, and we're ready to seal in our glitter with some epoxy. Just kidding, we need to cut out our hole at the top of our board. So I'm going to put it down on my table and take that same X-Acto knife and just cut around the edges of the hole. There's not too much epoxy in there, so it was really easy to cut out. Again, just be very, very careful. Okay, now it's time for epoxy. I'm taking 25 milliliters in my cup and I'm spreading a pretty substantial layer over the glitter. I want this to be totally smooth because I'm not going to put any more epoxy on this once we're done with this. So you don't have to flood it on there, but put enough that your glitter is smooth to the touch when you run your fingers over the surface. I let that layer of epoxy cure for 12 hours and then I was ready to apply my decal. I wanted to show you guys the surface of this board in the light because oh my gosh, it's so pretty. I'm using a decal from MagnoliaSVG. I'm gonna hang this sign in my kitchen, so I'm using a kitchen themed decal. Sidebar, I would not recommend using these charcuterie boards for actual charcuterie. These are made with FDA compliant epoxy, but I still wouldn't recommend putting food directly on them. So I would keep these for gifts or home decor, things like that. Anyway, I've got my decal ready to apply. I've got my transfer tape on. I've cut down the sides so that I have a little bit of room of transfer tape on each side and I can make sure that my decal is lined up perfectly. So I've got my ruler laid down and I'm gonna do my best to place this in the very center of my board, but if it's not perfect, it's okay. I'm gonna measure it up, get it as centered as possible, and then peel back one side of my transfer tape. I'm keeping the other side down against my board so that I can keep it in the right place. And then I'm going to smooth it out with the felt side of my vinyl scraper to make sure there are no bubbles and that it's down smoothly. I'm going to carefully peel back my transfer tape, keeping it as close to the board as possible to prevent any lifting or bubbles. And I'm not going to seal this with epoxy. You absolutely can if you're planning on selling these or giving them as gifts, but I might want to change this decal in a little while, so I'm keeping my options open with that. I'm not going to seal this. This is permanent vinyl anyway, so it should stay just fine. The last step we have is to add our string or ribbon to hang our board up and just add a little bit of detail. So I'm using this little like burlap rope string, and I'm gonna fold it in half and make a loop at the end. And I'm gonna tuck that loop into the hole and then pull the other ends through, so I've got this loop and my rope is secure on my board. And then I'm gonna take the top two pieces and just tie a basic knot. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm horrible at explaining knots. And I'm just gonna pull those through so we have a loop to hang our board from. I'm leaving about a 2-inch length for our loop, and then I'm gonna cut off the remainder at the top. And that's it for this tutorial. Here is the board all completed. I love how this turned out. It was so much fun to do something out of my tumbler box, and I think this is such a good idea for selling or giving as gifts. There are endless possibilities with this, and I love that you can make it entirely with glitter if you wanted to. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for new videos every single week, join our Facebook Makers community, the link is in the description, and thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye!